UFC President Dana White just announced some massive breaking news. The final UFC pay-per-view of 2025. Also, the final UFC pay-per-view of the ESPN era, which I'm happy to see done. And also potentially the final UFC pay-per-view in America ever. Because starting in January, all pay-per-views, aka numbered events, will be included with Paramount Plus, which is going to be very interesting to see how that all plays out in the beginning of the year. But we have the main event. It goes down December 6th in Las Vegas. Merab Dvalishvili versus Petr Yan 2 for the bantamweight title, which is insane. Merab's already returning again. I absolutely love it. Co-main event, Alexandre Pantoja versus Joshua Van for the flyweight title, which is a fight we already knew was really coming. Then we have Jan Blachowicz versus Bogdan Guskov and Henry Cejudo versus Payton Talbott, which are also bangers. And then after this news was announced by Dana White, a couple more fights trickled out that Dana didn't announce. One of them is an outright banger that's probably going to be on the main card. The other one is a banger that's probably going to be on the prelims. We'll get to those as well. Let's jump right into it. So the UFC tweets this out right after the announcement. Man, these are some solid fights. We have Merab versus Yan 2. We have Pantoja versus Van as well. Obviously for the flyweight title, we have Yan versus Guskov. And we have Cejudo versus Talbot. I'm going to react to each one of these fights, give an early prediction. But also, Dana White's announcement kind of surprised me a little bit. We're going to get to this in a second. And then also UFC 323 as a whole is pretty solid. It's nothing insane. I know the UFC's tweeting out and saying closing out the year strong. I'm going to be honest. I like this card. This is like a fight card that's pretty solid. If you're a hardcore fan, if you're a casual, you're like, oh, what is this? I don't know any of these guys, man. But it's a solid card. But at the same time, my initial reaction was they're holding out any real true quote-unquote stars for the Paramount deal. 322 is going to be the last like mega card that the UFC is going to give to ESPN, because if you look at this card, obviously I've already gone over the major fights. There's no real pay-per-view drawing power. Not that I personally care about it, because I don't get a cut of UFC pay-per-views. A lot of fans act like they do, but you can tell, there were some rumors of Volkanovski potentially versus Lauren Murphy, which isn't a huge fight, or Volkanovski versus Movsar, which I was holding out hope for, which isn't a huge fight, or there's some other potential options. But it's clear the UFC just tried to put on a card that has a bunch of solid fights that aren't necessarily going to hurt them come early 2026 when they're trying to really stack cards for that new Paramount deal, which is crazy. We're finally done with ESPN. This will be the last card, I think. I don't know if there'll be a fight night card after this. I don't have Topology in front of me. But this will be the last UFC pay-per-view of the ESPN era, which I absolutely hated. ESPN never got better since 2018, which is absolutely insane. But anyway, let's react to the main event first. Merab Dvalishvili versus Petr Yan. I don't know how to feel about this, but I will say this. I don't feel as disgusted, for lack of a better word, as I was about Merab Sandhagen, which I know there wasn't a lot of great options. I would have preferred Yan rematch Merab rather than Sandhagen get a title shot off a one-fight win streak over Figgy. What I'm trying to say here is I like this fight a lot more than I liked Merab versus Sandhagen. And the reason I like this fight a lot more than that fight is because even though I'm not necessarily picking Petr Yan, I see a path to victory for Petr Yan. It's been a few years since he got 50-45 by Merab. In that fight, it was really hard for Merab to hold him down. I get it. Same thing with Corey Sandhagen. But Merab has improved vastly. Petr Yan, there were some injury rumors. He had some issue with his cornerman and his visa coming into that first fight. And then Yan has also reeled off a decent win streak since then. I'll pull up his resume right now. I believe he's on a 3-fight win streak right now since the loss to Merab. Song Yadong, Devison Figueiredo, Marcus McGee. Marcus McGee, I understand, a lot of casuals don't know who he is. That's a damn good win. And I think that Petr Yan right now deserves the bantamweight title fight, regardless if he lost to him already. And what's even more insane to me is, in my opinion, in the UFC, maybe this is crazy to say this, Merab's Petr Yan's only real loss. He lost to Aljamain Sterling because of the illegal knee. He was clearly winning that fight on his way to a finish. He then lost a split decision that I actually thought he won against Aljamain Sterling. Then he got brutally robbed against Sean O'Malley. So he's kind of in a bad spot. And then he loses to Merab, where he put up maybe the best losing performance. I know people were hyping up Corey Sandhagen for potentially winning the first round. I don't really see that. And since then, it's been almost 2.5 years. This was in March of 2023. And he's reeled off 3 wins since then. Again, I think that's his only real loss is against Merab. And now he gets a chance to come back and avenge that loss. I actually think this fight can be competitive. But that being said, Merab just fought Corey Sandhagen at UFC 320 like a week ago, which is absolutely insane. He's already fighting again. I love that. I absolutely love that from Merab. And what's crazy to me is Merab is now trying to defend the belt for a 4th time in a single calendar year. How insane is that? How insane is that? Merab is the undeniable bantamweight GOAT. And look at this resume in 2025. He beat Umar Nurmagomedov in January. He then destroyed Sean O'Malley in June. And then he beat Corey Sandhagen in October. And then imagine he beats Petr Yan in December. Imagine how insane that will be. And he already said on Ariel's show, I seen a clip earlier, he's ready to come back in March if he beats Petr Yan in December. So this will be a record, 4 title defenses in a calendar year. And while I think there's a bit of, it's hard to say this because people are going to somehow jump all over me. I think the resume is becoming almost a bit overrated, even though it's still, I mean, he's the bantamweight GOAT. There's no doubt about it. But like Sean O'Malley was an industry plant. There's no doubt about that. Should have never got this rematch. I mean, that was a disgrace to his career and a disgrace to Merab's resume, to be quite honest. But man, if he's able to pull off 4 title defenses in a year, and Petr Yan being the finishing touch, and the fact that he got Umar and Corey Sandhagen, even though I don't think he deserved the title shot, still an elite fighter. That's insane, and I love that he wants to be so active. I really do. And Merab even said in his post-fight speech, he said, look, I'm going to lose. I can't win all of them, but I want to fight. And what really jumps out to me is the UFC really tried to sideline this dude for years. They tried to not even give him a title shot because of some made-up bullshit that Merab didn't want to do this, he didn't want to do that, even though he was never actually in line for the title shot. I made multiple videos on it about how Merab never actually turned down a title shot when it was his opportunity to get a title shot, and instead they're giving Marlon Chito Vera his title shot. And the UFC clearly did not like Merab, and the UFC was clearly biased against Merab, and the UFC clearly didn't want Merab as the champion. And now look what he's done. Sean O'Malley would have fought once a year. Mr. Brittle Legs would have fought once a year. Merab's out here defending his belt 4 times against top contenders. Say what you want. You know, people there was 2 different, groups of fans when it came to the Umar fight. Umar only beat 1 top contender, but look at the long winning streak. And then Merab was saying he doesn't deserve it. Umar, I think outside of Petr Yan, is probably the best win on his resume, if not a better win than Petr Yan. The dream fight for me has always been Yan versus Umar. But I just love Merab as a champion. I really do. I think he's a guy that has been improving. His style is fun to watch, which I've been saying for a long time. Everyone's been like, no, look what he did to Jose Aldo. He smudged Jose Aldo. Merab is fun to watch. Look what he did to O'Malley in the rematch. Look what he did to Corey Sandhagen. Almost knocked him out with his hands. Give this guy the respect he deserves. I know he's starting to get it a bit. But man, I love that Merab is actually going to try to defend his title for a 4th time in a single calendar year. And apparently, so does Dana White. I want to show you this clip of Dana White announcing UFC 323 because there's 2 things that stand out to me. I want to see if you guys have any idea what those 2 things are. Comment them down below. I'm going to play about 40 seconds of this.
Now let's go to UFC 323 from T-Mobile Arena on December 6th. The main event, the number 3 pound-for-pound fighter in the world, Merab, makes the quick turnaround to face the number 2 ranked Petr Yan. On the Monday after Merab's title defense at UFC 320, he came into the offices here and told us how important it was for him to break the record for the most title defenses in a year. Merab's on a 14-fight win streak and is looking to make an unprecedented 4th title defense in under a year. And you got to respect the hell out of Merab for wanting to break this title. I love this shit. I love stuff like this.
So anyway, Dana White's showing a little enthusiasm there. I mean, I know it's still, it's a low bar considering every time he announces a fight, it seems like he's being held at gunpoint to read a script. But there's two things that jump off the page to me. One, is this high definition? He doesn't look like Brett Okamoto in a shit webcam. He doesn't look like he's in 480p. He actually decided to record this in high definition. I mean, it's crazy we have to applaud this for a multi-billion-dollar company, but shout out to Bald Mr. Krabs for actually recording in high definition a fight announcement. But also, the little bit of enthusiasm I saw there was promoting Merab. They hated Merab because Merab took away the little teacher's pet industry plant Sean O'Malley, who Dana White anointed as the future of the UFC, as the next UFC star. Oh my God, he smokes weed, he dyes his hair. Oh my God, he's got edgy tattoos. He's the future of the sport. He can bring in the Nelk Boy fans. Oh yes. They denied Merab for his title shot for that bullshit ass Marlon Chito Vera fight. And now Merab's your 135-pound GOAT. It doesn't look like there's anybody out there that can beat him. And Dana White is actually starting to promote him just a little bit, even if it's just a little bit. I've said it for a long time. I find Merab exciting. I know people are like, man, he smudges his opponents. And, people talk about the Petr Yan fight and the Jose Aldo fight. Merab is very exciting to watch. That unlimited cardio that he has is insane to watch. The way he walks guys down and puts a nonstop pace and pressure on them is insane. And I just, I think that Merab could have much more star power. I'm not saying he's going to be a Conor McGregor or an Ilia Topuria. I think he could have much more star power if Dana White and the UFC actually promoted him. Like, look at this guy. He's unbeatable. Look at the way he weaponizes his gas tank. He walks into the danger zone and he just mauls guys and he beats them up. And look at the way he almost finished Corey Sandhagen on the feet. And Merab is getting better and better with every single fight. And while I think Yan has a better chance than Corey Sandhagen, I think Corey Sandhagen was a bit of a sacrificial lamb. People were kind of giving him a participation trophy afterwards for maybe winning the first round. I think Yan has a better chance. I'm not picking against Merab until he loses. Maybe in another year, if he starts to slow down a bit, maybe against Umar, I would consider picking against him. But right now, I can't pick against him. So I'm going to pick Merab in this rematch. But I think Yan, even though it's a rematch, I think this is a good name on his resume. Like, there's some question marks around that first fight. Nothing insane, but it's like the visa issues, the cornerman issue, the injury rumors. While you don't really know truly, if Merab can go out there and be like, oh, I got 2 wins over Petr Yan, that's way better than the 2 wins Aljamain Sterling has over him, I'll tell you that much. So I'm going to pick Merab to win in this rematch. Looking forward to this matchup. I think Merab is going to be, we're going to miss Merab when he's gone. Even the people who hate on Merab, they're going to miss him when he's gone. So I'm going to go Merab probably via decision. I don't see him finishing Petr Yan. He couldn't finish Corey Sandhagen. I don't see him tagging Yan on the feet the way he tagged Corey Sandhagen. I almost said Umar there. But yeah, I think Merab gets it done. Pressure heavy style, nonstop pace, pushing Yan up against the fence, taking him down, Yan scrambling back up. But it's hard to get off, man, when a guy's just nonstop just ragdolling you massive pause to that. So I'm going to go Merab, but I gave like Corey Sandhagen like a 5% chance, maybe even less. I'll give Yan like a 15% chance. And maybe I'll have to revisit that after, later down the line, a couple months from now when we get to the actual fight. But I think Yan could actually do something in this fight because he's got good takedown defense. He was ragdolling Aljo. And if there's any credence to the injury rumors and that he was not healthy, supposedly 50%, which that's an excuse everyone uses nowadays, maybe Petr Yan surprises us and gets it done over Merab. Now let's talk about the co-main event. Co-main event, Alexandre Pantoja versus Joshua Van for the flyweight title. This is a banger fight as well. It really is. Again, I feel like this card is like a low-key banger card for hardcores, and they kind of held back because of the Paramount deal, and I would love like a mega fight on this card, but there wasn't really a lot of options. I would have loved, honestly, if you would have gave us these fights and then like a Movsar, Lerone Murphy on the top, or Lerone Murphy, Volk versus Lerone Murphy, or Volk versus Movsar in the main event, and then had 3 title fights on this card would have really been amazing. But still solid fight card, 2 title fights. Pantoja looking to make another title defense against Joshua Van, who's looked incredible. And by the way, Joshua Van, crazy win streak, and also 3 wins in 2025. which is insane. He's on a 5-fight win streak. It seems like he just lost to Charles Johnson yesterday, and now he's already reeled off a 5-fight win streak. Then you have Pantoja, who's the GOAT at 125, in my opinion. I mean, look at his streak right now. Ragdoll Kai Kara France, Ragdoll Kai Asakura, beat Steve Erceg, beat Royval, beat Moreno to win back the title. Incredible. Destroyed Alex Perez. This guy's a finishing machine. He doesn't get the credit he deserves. 20 finishes, 30-5. 30 of those wins, 30 wins, 20 of those are finishes. But Joshua Van, it's crazy. Pantoja's 35 years old. The older you get, the lower the division, the more chance you have of falling off. And Joshua Van, how old is he right now? 24 years old. Looked incredible in his last fight against Royval. It was one of the best fights of 2025. So I actually think Van has a solid chance of winning this fight. I don't know if I'm going to pick him yet, though. Pantoja's hard to pick against. He really is. I made that mistake last fight, unfortunately. I was like, you know what? Pantoja's getting older. He's bound to have a fall off. For an early prediction, I'm gonna say Pantoja gets it done. But at the same time, I may ultimately end up picking Joshua Van when it comes around to the card. But man, this is... I know I talk about this a lot, but this is all I ask for, guys. Give me the true number one contender versus the champion. That's all I truly want. The true number one contender versus the champion. This is striker versus grappler matchup. Joshua Van wants to push forward. He wants to rip to your body. He wants to rip up the stairs. He starts off a little bit slow. And Pantoja wants to just ragdoll you to the ground and strangle you. And he pushes the pressure early and often. I'll never forget that fight against Alex Perez. The way he walked out there, walked him down. But Pantoja will swing wild as well. And that's where Van could counter him. And it just takes one shot, especially when you're 35 years old. Especially when you've been in a lot of wars. Especially when you're taking a lot of damage. I may end up ultimately picking Van. But I think the smart pick is Pantoja in this matchup. And I just love that we're getting a true number one contender against the champion. It seems like that happens far too rare nowadays. And now the top two fights of UFC 323 are undeniable number one contenders against their champion in their division. It's just insane. Just absolutely insane to me. So I love this matchup. Can't wait. I mean, we already kind of knew. I know people were saying his teammate leaked it the other day. I mean, we already knew this fight was happening. Joshua Van is a guy that's gone out there, put on amazing performances. The Royval fight was absolutely insane. Everyone knew once he won that fight, he was the undeniable number one contender. And man, it's crazy. We're going to have a 24-year-old number one contender versus a 35-year-old dominant champion. If this was a higher up weight class, this would get a lot more attention from like casuals. So I love this matchup. Can't wait to see it. Early lean, I'm going to go Pantoja. But I may ultimately end up picking Van because the way Van rips to the body, that can be very helpful against guys who like to close the distance and grapple. But man, Pantoja's jiu-jitsu, there's levels to this. I feel like after this fight, afterwards, no matter who wins, it's going to be, oh my God, that was so obvious. Because I could see Pantoja going out there and strangling him in the first round and being like, man, there's levels to this game. And Pantoja is just too damn good. And it's too much too soon for Joshua Van. But at the same time, I could see afterwards, like Van knocks him out and be like, man, Van's striking is unbelievable and he's young and he's athletic and he has good takedown defense and his boxing is unbelievable and his body work is unbelievable and that works against grapplers and Pantoja's taking too much damage and it was so obvious that Van was going to get, I feel like you could see either one of those. But for right now, I'm going to pick Pantoja going out there, pushing the pace, taking any damage he needs to take against Van. And once he gets a hold of you, he will find a way to create a scramble, end up on your back, and choke you out. And so I'm going to go Pantoja to get it done in the co-main event. And but I'm really looking forward to this matchup. One of my favorite things is just knowing a fight could go either way. Okay, the other fights on the card, real quick. We have Jan Blachowicz versus Bogdan Guskov. Blachowicz feels like he's been out forever. I know he fought early this year against Carlos Ulberg, but before that he's been out for a while, right? So he fought Ulberg in March of 2025. Before that was 2023. So he's had one fight since he fought Pereira in 2023. I like this matchup. I think Jan Blachowicz is kind of criminally underrated, but I think he's getting old. How old is he now? Like 42. He's 42 years old. Bogdan Guskov, 33 years old. Light heavyweight division, 33 isn't that old. So I think this is a banger matchup. I think it's an aesthetically pleasing matchup. I think it's a fan-friendly matchup. It's going to be primarily striking. Jan doesn't like to grapple. Guskov doesn't like to grapple. Yeah, they both have some grappling ability. But I'm going to go Guskov. I think this is one of those fights where it's like Blachowicz is getting old. I think Blachowicz from like 3-4 years ago would probably still be champion. And I would probably pick him against almost anyone. But I think he's gotten older. He's been inactive. He has nasty leg kicks. He has legendary Polish power, but I think Guskov is too dangerous. Now, Guskov does get a little wild and crazy, and I could see him getting clipped on the chin and getting KO'd by Yan. But I'm not... It's one of those matchups it's really actually hard to pick. Because a year and a half ago, easy Jan Blachowicz. Oh, Jan Blachowicz got it easy. Who did Bogdan Guskov lose to? Volkan Ozdemir got subbed by Volkan Ozdemir. I think he got hurt right before that as well. But since then, look at these performances. Zach Palm got a bum, but still went out there and finished him. Same with Ryan Spann. Same with Billy Elikana. Same with Nikita Krylov. I don't know. This one is a 50-50 matchup. It all depends what version of Yan shows up. If Yan isn't completely washed, Yan wins this fight easily. Probably counters him and slumps him out cold with the Polish power. But if Yan is old and slow and the time off, and he looked okay against Ulberg early this year. So maybe early prediction, I will go Yan. But I feel like I'm going to pick Guskov. I just feel like sometimes these guys just start to get older and they start to get inactive and they start to have surgeries and they're sitting out for injuries, and Jan Blachowicz has kind of been that guy. And now I just feel like Guskov might get it done. But for early prediction, I'm going to say Jan Blachowicz right now. I know I'm switching back and forth on some of these fights, but I'm going to say Yan, because the thing is, if Yan isn't like, if he's like 70% of what he once was, he beats Guskov, because Guskov is too wild and crazy, and Yan has a hell of a chin. Yan can absorb damage, chop at the legs, and then land his own counter shots and potentially KO Guskov and rip to the body as well, like he did against Dominic Reyes. So I'm going to go Jan Blachowicz, early prediction, brutal KO, maybe like a second round KO. Also, Guskov, I worry about him gassing out in the first round. Next fight we have, and we're going to check out some other fights as well. Henry Cejudo versus Payton Talbott. What is Cejudo on a 3-fight losing streak now? Let me actually pull that up real quick. I think he's on a 3-fight losing streak. Mr. Gold Medalist. Yeah, lost to Yadong, lost to Merab, lost to Aljamain Sterling. Not a horrible losing streak by any means. Not a horrible losing streak. There was the eye poke debacle in the Song Yadong fight. But Cejudo is getting old. He's 38 years old at bantamweight. I know I'm kind of fence sitting on a lot of these picks. Payton Talbott got out grappled by Hani Barcelos. Henry Cejudo is an Olympic gold medalist wrestler. But when in this sport has he ever went out there and taken guys down and held them down? When? And I think Talbott, since that Hani Barcelos fight, has been a wake-up call for him. And he's been training nothing but takedown defense. And the UFC hates Henry Cejudo. They hate Cejudo, man. When Cejudo tried to retire as a negotiating tactic as a double champ, Dana White and the UFC put Henry Cejudo on the ultimate shit list. And you know what? I don't think I'm switching off this pick. I'm going Payton Talbott. I think the majority will pick Cejudo. I'm not 100% sure. I haven't really seen fan reaction to these fights yet. But I'm going to pick Talbott to get it done. Talbott's nasty on the feet. If he shores up some of that takedown defense, and Henry Cejudo, I know he gets dick rode a bit for like, oh my God, he's Olympic gold medalist, and he's 38. When has he shown the wrestling off in his last few fights? It just hasn't happened. Oh, he got Aljamain Sterling down a couple times. Okay, whoop-de-doo, didn't hold him there. When in his career has he ever really taken someone down and smothered him on the ground? That's what you need to do against a guy like Payton Talbott, who's nasty on the feet, brutal KO power, lightning fast hands, much younger. Let's see how old Payton Talbott is. 27 years old. 11 years younger than Henry Cejudo. And I know the streak, he's only on a 1-fight streak against Felipe Lima, who a lot of people didn't even pick him to win. I think I picked Lima in that fight. But before that, he's just knocking dudes dead. Yanis Gamori, Cameron Simon, finished Nick Aguirre, who Nick Aguirre actually out-grappled him, which does make me worry. Does make me worry a bit. But I'm going to go Payton Talbott to get it done. I'm picking him to KO Henry Cejudo. I know Cejudo isn't a guy that's been finished a lot. There was the eye poke debacle. He wanted the no contest from Herzog in the fight against Song Yadong. Didn't get it. That showed me a broken man there. That showed me a man that's just showing up for a paycheck. And I think Payton Talbott is it's gonna be one of those fights where you're like, damn, the young perpetually eat the old. I don't see Henry Cejudo ever winning a fight in the UFC ever again. And I think the UFC made this matchup to build Payton Talbott's name. I know people are gonna say Hani Barcelos. I think Talbott has worked on that. I think Cejudo's washed up and old. And I think Cejudo was overrated in his prime as well. And I think on the feet, it's not even close. I think Talbott will find good shots, maybe even get out-grappled in the first round. but I think he'll find good shots, and I think he'll be able to put Henry Cejudo away, or bare minimum win 2 out of 3 rounds. I'm going to go Payton Talbott. Now, the other thing I want to check out is the full card, right? So we have the full card here. We already talked about the major fights, but let's see if Tapology has updated yet, because there's a couple other fights that have been announced. Okay, it does not seem like Tapology is updated yet. There's one major fight and there's one prelim fight that I want you guys to see. So first off, the prelim fight that's been announced, Chris Duncan versus Terrence McKinney will also go down December 6th in Las Vegas. This is a solid matchup. I'm looking forward to this fight. This is a banger in the lightweight division. Terrence McKinney's always fun to watch. Chris Duncan, really solid fighter. Not elite of the elite. Neither one of these guys are the elite of the elite. But this is like a solid, maybe main event of the prelims. Maybe. And yeah, I think this is another good fight. They're clearly building out 323 to be like a hardcore. Like the hardcores really like this pay-per-view because they know they're not going to sell very many pay-per-views, but they don't care anyway because they're just saving up all their star power for January in that Paramount deal. But they also still want to give a somewhat, like, sometimes when they put like a huge main event, they'll just shit the bed all down the rest of the card. This card, they don't have a big main event, so at least they're giving quality fights underneath of it, and this is another quality fight. I'm going to go Terrence McKinney in this one, but I could see Chris Duncan being able to get it done, but I'm picking Terrence McKinney via KO. And then the other one that actually matters that's going to be on the main card is from Mike Bond. Big night for flyweight at UFC 323. Brandon Moreno will also face Taishiro Taira. That's a banger. That's a banger. That's also a replacement fight if Pantoja or Van falls out of the main event. You could easily slot Moreno or Taira in, and that could be a number 1 contender fight. Depending on how the division shakes out, we don't know what's going to happen next year. We don't know what's going to happen in this fight. If Pantoja loses, there's no doubt he's going to get a rematch against Joshua Van. But Moreno is right up there. Taishiro Taira, I know, who did he just recently lose to? Off the top of my head, I cannot remember. Let me go back to Tapology real quick and search that because I cannot remember. Taira, let's see if it pulls up. Taishiro Taira, who did he just lose to? Brandon Royval, split decision, close fight. Most people thought he lost. Then beat Hung Sung Park after that, who's actually fighting this weekend, I believe. So Taishiro Taira at one point was like, oh, he's going to be the guy to beat Pantoja and has excellent grappling skills. I really want to see Pantoja versus Taira at some point in time, so would love to see that. So if he can beat Brandon Moreno, depending on who else would be available, they don't have Makayev anymore. They could re-sign him. I know he has a fight coming up in like Brave FC or something. If they re-sign him, the division's looking bright. So Pantoja's just fighting top contender after top contender. Brandon Moreno versus Taira is going to be very interesting because Moreno has good defensive grappling, has good striking, but seemed like he kind of lost a step in his last fight. Didn't look particularly great. And Taira, if he can get him down, man, he's just nasty on the ground. He's like a Japanese Pantoja in a way. So I could see either guy winning that fight. I'm going to say early pick Brandon Moreno, just because if Moreno can keep it standing, I think Taira's striking is kind of ass, especially when he starts to slow down a bit and, his stamina starts to fail him a bit. His striking really looks like garbage. But overall, really solid card. Looking forward to UFC 323. I don't think there's any more to say. I hope they actually start promoting Merab properly. Because he doesn't dye his hair and have tattoos and say edgy stuff and be like, weed is tight, I like weed. That doesn't mean they shouldn't promote him. It's like Dana White in the UFC picks out certain fighters that they anoint as the future, and then they promote them rather than promoting the guys who are actually out there winning nonstop and putting on good performances. Shout out to Merab for wanting to defend his title 4 times in a single calendar year. Can't wait for UFC 323. Again, it's not like the mega fights that people really look forward to as casuals, but as a hardcore fan, I'm really looking forward to this card. Was there anything else on the card that I didn't even talk about? Let me see. Let me go back real quick before we end this video. No, Macy Barber, Karini Silva. Who gives a rat's ass about Macy Barber? Then you got Mansour Abdul Malik versus Antonio Tricoli. How is Tricoli still in the UFC? I mean, he looked like dog shit against Tresean Gore and Shara Magomedov. How is he still in the UFC? That's what I would like to know. But anyway, guys, let me know what you guys think down in the comments. Like the video, subscribe to the channel. Let me know who you're picking in these fights. Do you like UFC 323? I'm genuinely curious. Thank you, and I'll see you in the next video.